Welcome to today's webinar presentation being brought to you by the New York Metro chapter of Informs. My name is Jack Thurer. I'm the chapter president. There are quite a number of people registered for today's meeting who are new to us. So before I introduce today's speaker, I'm going to share some words and tell you something about us for those who don't know much about Informs. Let me just go to screen share here. And there we go. So, oh, there we go. Informs is the premier professional association in the world for professionals in the field of operations research, management science, analytics, which includes data science. Just last year, Informs celebrated its 25th anniversary. However, its legacy goes back far further than that. It all began in the early 1950s when Orsa and Timms started professional associations for professionals in operations research. And it was in 1995, just 26 years ago, that those two merged to form Informs. Today, Informs has over 10,000 members worldwide. And it serves the professional community in quite a number of ways. It publishes 17 peer-reviewed scholarly journals, 3 magazines, and it sponsors meetings and conferences throughout the year all over the world. And some of them are special interest conferences, such as analytics, healthcare, marketing, optimization, whatever. Within Informs, there are many ways to participate. After becoming a member, you can go to any of the meetings and any of the conferences that I just talked about, but you can also join special communities. There are 19 chapters, geographical chapters, of which New York Metro is one of them. But there are others all over the country as well as all over the world. There are 35 special interest groups. So if you have a special interest in transportation, simulation, optimization, data science, whatever, there's something for you. There are also communities called FORs that don't quite fit into the specialized category. These are things like junior faculty members and and so forth. We also have 46 student chapters around the world. In New York, we have 2 student chapters which are active, one at Pace University and one at NYU, and the New York Metro chapter liaisons with those 2 very closely and sponsors activities with them. Informs also offers prizes for excellence in the field, awards and certifications and so forth. You can learn much more about Informs and who we are by going to the website, which is at the bottom of the slide, www.informs.org. As I said, New York Metro chapter is one of, I think I said 19 chapters around the world. We were established in 1955, and we've been going strong ever since. Established to serve the professionals in the New York Metro area. That's the purpose of a chapter. It's a geographical nature, and it brings people together. we've had, prior to the pandemic, for over 40 years, we had monthly in-person meetings with speaker and a buffet lunch and so forth. However, times are changing. We're moving into the 21st century, and our members have told us that we need to change our format. So rather than having these high-ticket events that were originated in more genteel times, we started to experiment with free meetings with no catering held in the evening in donated space. And we had one excellent meeting like that hosted by Deloitte Consulting in Rockefeller Center, and it went very well. But then we got hit by the pandemic, and we discontinued in-person meetings. And now, during this time, this is the third of our webinar meetings where we're presenting a speaker of a cutting-edge topic. Chapters such as New York facilitate networking among professionals, and how you can expand your network of people you know, who you can collaborate with, who you can get references with, and so forth. And I've made many good friends over the years. Chapters and Informs in general offers an opportunity to volunteer. In fact, Informs is largely run by a whole army of volunteers, and we're backed up by a wonderful staff of professionals in the Informs business office. In fact, they are here with us today. They're the ones who are keeping this show going right now. We wouldn't be able to do this without them. We've worked with them over the years, and they are just wonderful. The volunteer, like I said, Informs is run most largely by volunteers. And I assure you, it's a wonderful opportunity. And if you choose to volunteer, either with Informs in the New York chapter, you'll find yourself working with some wonderful people. It's a wonderful experience. It offers leadership opportunities and just a broadening of knowledge of professionalism of the field and beyond that. So with that, I'll begin to introduce our speaker today. If questions arise during the presentation, the way you can ask a question is at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. So simply go to the Q&A button, not the chat button, but the Q&A, type in your question. We have someone here in the background who's collecting all the questions. And at the end of Jonathan's presentation, we'll present the questions to him. I have known Jonathan personally for well over 20 years. And we've become good friends, and we've stayed in touch over the years. It's the kind of relationship that develops by participating in a professional organization like Informs and also volunteering. As a senior director of data science at Dun Bradstreet, a premier global business data provider, Dr. Yan has extensive professional experiences in managing teams and projects and in providing innovative solutions to business globally. His current work includes creating D&B ESG Indexes, which is the world's largest ESG rating system. With publications and patents, Dr. Yan's expertise and research interests include global risk management solutions in various industries, supplier and supply chain management, third-party anti-corruption compliance, fraud detection, and credit risk analytics. As a researcher and business practitioner, he is a frequent speaker and presenter at multiple international conferences, including Informs. So today's talk by Dr. Jonathan Yan will be creating ESG risk score for supplier management. With that, I hand it over to you, Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, Jack, for the great introduction with all those good words about me. Thank you. You made my day. Hello, everyone. Depending on where you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this web seminar. And before we start, just let you know, after we finish, my deck, my slides will be loaded to the website, to this chapter website. So you do not have to, take a note, take it easy and have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee. So let's get started. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, let me know you can see my screen, okay? Can you see my screen, Jack?
Yes.
Okay, can you guys hear me all right?
Looks good.
Great, okay. So today's topic, as Jack mentioned, is about create ESG scores for supplier management. If you worked on ESG scores in the past, you may ask me, well, where is the team? Because usually for ESG score, you need a team. It takes a lot of functions, a lot of work. Luckily, I have a large team behind me all the time. They are my teammates, my colleagues, my manager. Yeah, I thank them for their contributions and hard work. And also, you see my email address on the screen. After this presentation, if you have any feedbacks, comments, critiques, suggestions, and feel free to drop me a line to my email address. I'll appreciate that very much. Okay. Let me give you some background information for this project. The first one, I think, is, we all know ESG, and we know ESG is significant when you make decisions for your investment, right? And for business, for the reputation risk, right? They also care about their ESGs. But today's topic is ESG and supplier management. And you may see why that is the case.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Excuse me. I think some of our listeners might be a bit unknown, not know exactly what ESG stands for.
Yes. Yeah, I have a section covering that. That's a good question. It's not
perfect.
Simply the words, it's also its impact on the score. I'll explain that later, okay, in details. Yeah, thank you. About ESG and the supplier management. And before I give details of ESG later, the ESG is for environmental, social, governance. It's about how company, how business, how you as an individual, how you do good for the society, how you protect the environment, right? How your company is in good governance in terms of obey laws. I will explain more in details, but it's a hard topic nowadays in case you do not know what ESG is. But let me first cover this page. Now, why ESG and the supplier management? I have a list of reasons you can add it to this list. The first one is supplier compliance, right? And you can make sure the suppliers, they comply to the law, for example, anti-corruption, FCPA violations, and the products, your supplier use, like using animal fur, those kind of things, right? Labor rights, human trafficking, and also employee diversity, inclusion. And all these are related to ESG and the supplier management. Not to mention how you select your supplier, right? Your supplier procurement, and also the onboarding of your supplier, this process. And your suppliers is not a one layer. Your suppliers have their suppliers behind them. It's really a network we call TRN. D&B and the company I worked for, we have a network for each supplier. We can tell you the supplier for a given business. And also supplier relationship management, SRM, and this one I think I do not need to elaborate, everybody knows, right? So that's about my topic, ESG and the supplier management. About supplier management, I have been doing a series at Informs in the last few years. On the screen are the links to my 2 previous work. I present my papers at the Informs Business Analytics Conference, 2017-2019. If you're interested, those are 2 papers on supplier management, specifically on compliance risk, for example, anti-corruption, human trafficking. You know, coincidentally, those are also part of ESG, which I will elaborate, let you know. So pretty much those 2 are related to ESG, which I'll present today. So for today, I'm going to talk about creating ESG scores for supplier management. But the first step is how you can create a ESG score. Current ESG landscape. I think most of us will know this market goes very fast. And if you see, I borrowed this slide from Bloomberg. In the past few years, over the next few years, for asset under management, regardless of whether the market will be a bear market or bull market in the next few years, the ESG expenditure or the ESG asset under management will go pretty much monotonically, you can see on this screen. About ESG scores and the data. Currently, there are several major ESG score suppliers, and those are first movers in this data field. For example, like MSCI, like S&P Global, like Sustainalytics. If you go to Yahoo, if you check the financial services, financial stock values, you can see underneath sustainability, you can see the ESG scores. But all these scores, they are more towards public companies. And I'll show you later how D&B scores covers, but currently those providers, they provide ESG scores mostly for public companies. And those major players, there are about a dozen. Typically they have internal team with hundreds of people, analysts, data collectors, because I said earlier, ESG project takes a team. Data. If you want to create a score, definitely you need the data. But for ESG, there's a specialty. That is, you need data not only from your company, from other third parties. You also need those public data on the web, and that requires you have internal capability, or you have third-party vendor capability to do web crawling, web scraping, deep learning, NLP. And that's a necessity for any ESG score before you can start. So my observation about current ESG is ESG landscape currently is fragmented with several major players, and also is incompatible for their scores. For example, in case you use ESG, you may have found out you get ESG scores from those major players, and you may see the scores are very different for the same company. The reason is how they define ESG. I still owe you this explanation. What is ESG? See, how they define ESG, because that determines how they measure ESG, and also what data they use. So pretty much now you go to one data vendor, you get a ESG score for a company, go to another vendor, the score may be different. they are not compatible. And also they focus on public companies. For public companies, for US, you have 6,000 active ones, not less than 8,000. Globally, you see in 1,000. But we are talking about supplier management for this webinar. For supplier management, majority of suppliers, they are private companies. Then how you apply ESG to your supplier management on those private companies without ESG scores? That's something we'll talk more in the following slides. Let me give you a brief introduction to D&B ESG scores. First, it is not one score, it's a family of scores. We have, for a given business, we can give you the overall ESG score for that business. And also go down to dimensions like ESG, environmental, social, governance, independently, separately. What are the scores for this company? And compared with the competitors, we also have theme level. So underneath each dimension, like a ESG, later I'll show you, we also have different themes. Totally, there are 13 of them. We also offer you 13 theme level scores. So pretty much we examine this company from different angles. Okay. And we know D&B has more than 300 million companies information in-house. So we use those data, plus we use the government data, NGO, those are non-governmental organizations. We also definitely use news. We use company websites, which I'll talk more later. And I mentioned earlier, most ESG scores, they are on public companies, but our score, we do include public companies, but we also have scores for 5 million US private companies. In case you're interested, we are expanding our score to UK, to EU, to other countries. And the third bulletin is about what is ESG. I'm sorry I still own this explanation, but we build a framework on the definition of ESG. If you ask ESG to different people, so they may have different answers. So this one I'll show you later in a slide. The D&B ESG score, we use a lot of factual data. And also we tell you which data we use, why we assign a score to this ESG dimension. You may glad to see this. We see our scores, we find out they are correlated with the business performance, like sales growth, your top line, payment delinquency, your bottom line, like a net income growth. We're still testing version 1, as I said earlier. This is for US only for now, and we have been receiving very positive feedbacks. Okay, so now let's come. I should move this slide earlier. So what is ESG? We're not talking about what ESG stands for. We all know environmental, social, governance. We need to know how you define ESG exactly, because that determines how we measure ESG. So D&B has its own framework for ESG. Currently on the market, there are several major standards on ESG. The top 4 are SASB, GRI, United Nations, SDG, and the TCFD. Those 4, they are unique, and also they have lots of overlap, especially the first 2. Like SASB is gaining the momentum, and more people using SASB because SASB examine the company, examine the ESG for a company more from outside in, see how outside impacts the company. And GRI leans more towards how your company ESG aspect impact outside the world. The UN SDG, there are 17 goals. They are unique. They are different from SASB, GRI. For example, the goal number 1 is no poverty. Goal number 2, and no hunger. So they are different. We combine those, including the last one, TCFD is more for investment on environments. So we combine the 4 plus others into our own ESG framework. And underneath each dimension, like ESG, we call dimension, we have several themes. I cannot show you the screen right now, but pretty much underneath E, we have pollution, for example, like a GHG, the greenhouse emission, like a natural resources, energy management, water, and the biodiversity, and also how your company, whether a company has policies on environment, or your company receive rewards, or receive punishment, or you have violations. For example, your company is on the EPA blacklist. So that's an example. Underneath each dimension, like a E, we have themes. Underneath each theme, we have a list of topics. For example, when you say the natural resources, underneath E, for that theme, you have water, energy, and biodiversity, land. So these are different topics. For each topic, this is a key unit for scoring. We have a list of, for each topic, we have a list of keyword diagram, which I'll elaborate more later. So theoretically, this is the framework for ESG, for environmental social governance. If you still have questions, you may get some answer later from the slides below. So now let's talk about data, because we know when you build a score, and we all know data is the key. So this slide gives you a rough idea how we use data. I classify them into 4 groups, roughly. On the left are those like ICC government website information, including government blacklist, the EPA I mentioned earlier, the OFAC, and also the OSHA, EPRS, and that's called the SAM, the violation of safety, like also the government excluded list of companies, like Office of Foreign Asset Control. Those information from the government, that's one category we use for ESG. The second one is D&B data. D&B hosts, I said earlier, 300 million plus business information. And we have green list, we have global diversity list, we have spending data, like we know for a given company, how much you spend on employee training, how much you spend on donation. So all these, how much you spend for, say you hire an auditor for your financial statement, how much you spend on new technology, new like energy spending, and these kind of things. So we have that information. That helps a lot for our ESG score. I'm not going through those details, but again, later you will see the slides from the website. If a question, send me an email. I'll explain more on those information we have hosted at D&B. The third category, I think this is more typical for other suppliers. For D&B, we're unique. We have lots of data from second columns. But maybe for you, the third column is the key news, internet. And I said earlier, you need a team of capabilities, functions for data crawling and data scraping, NLP Deep Learning. That's where you need that those functions for this column. So we use global news feeds. We have like tens of thousands news sources. And also we use NGO report. Why we trust more NGO than the one on the far right, the company website? Because company website is published by company. You can see actually on this slide from left to right, there is it's a continuum in terms how you trust the data, right? And so NGOs are more like we use multiple NGOs on a given company, see their evaluations on the same company. That helps make data more reliable. Lastly, we use a company website, and we are using text scraping and go to each company website and check the sub URLs and check those ones which are related to ESG, and scraping all the contents, including the CSR reports, and then generate the ESG information scores. I think the underlying question is, you heard of this jargon, greenwashing, right? And also, what about incomplete data, biased data for ESG? What about the final ESG score? How you can trust the score? How much confidence we have on the scores? For the first one, greenwashing, the answers actually are on this page. We are applying for patents, so I won't be able to elaborate more, but the answers are on this page. The second one about incomplete data, biased data, of course. If data has issues, you cannot trust the scores. Earlier, I showed you I have a research paper on incomplete data and the biased data. You can refer to that paper. That will give you some idea how you correct bias of the data, how you can use the incomplete data. And for ESG, it's hard to have complete data. It's how you make decisions, how you make a better decision based on incomplete data. The last one, ESG score confidence, how you can tell your users, the confidence level of each ESG scores. I have a slide on that later. Methodology, our secret sauce. Because we're talking more in details now. When you are creating a score, there are lots of components of the score. Based on what you create a score for a company. Earlier, we talked about the standards. Take one, for example, SASB. And SASB is gaining momentum, is increasingly more popular nowadays in this field. So we take that as an example. SASB classifies industries into 11 major categories. And also underneath each category, there are subcategories. There are totally 77 subcategories. Why classify this way? Because for ESG, different in the industry, the ESG components are different, right? For some industry, E is more relevant than others. And the next two slides give you an example on the classification and for a given industry, how we use SASB for score calculation. This slide contains the 77 sub-industries from SASB. If you have a hard time reading them, my eyes are not good either. But remember, you can always download the slides from the website from Informs. So don't worry, you can study them later, the 77. But from here, you can see those industries, they will be different in terms of concerns of ESG, right? ESG, they are different to different industries. So for the score, you have to assign different weights, different importance to each ESG component. Give you example. For example, SASB underneath consumer goods, that's a major category, 1 of the 11. And there's the second column is one of the 77 sub-industry. It is for accessories and the footwear underneath consumer goods. In this subcategory, SASB lists the column 3, the 6 aspect of ESG concerns, and 3 about environmental, and 3 about social. In case you have studied the SASB and GRI, some people believe SASB may be weak on governance, but SASB and the GRI, they are both trying hard to enhance their standards and make them more complete and more compatible with each other. So they're getting better and they'll be more similar in the future. So here you do not see governance, but for D&B scores for a company in this industry, we do have governance components. So our framework, our ESG definition, we use SASB and GRI and the UN SDG and all the different standards. So the right part of this table is how we link SASB with D&B ESG framework. You see in D&B, we have dimensions. By dimension, there are 3 dimensions, ESG, right? And then underneath each dimension, we have theme. You can see here for environments here, for this industry, 3 themes are concerned: natural resources, environmental risk, and opportunities. Okay. Underneath each theme, I said earlier, there are different topics. For example, like natural resources, they have water management. Here's energy management. SASB believes more significant for this industry than water management. I think these slides give you an idea how you can quantify the importance of each topic for a given industry. Okay, so this slide has more meat, and you may have more questions because for ESG score, depending on how you design your methodology. For D&B score, topic level. Remember, we have 3 hierarchies: topic, above topic is theme, above theme is dimension. Dimension means E, S, or G. But topic is the key for our calculation. The lower level you go, the more accurate your score is, right? So for a given industry, for a given company, for a given topic, we have a value. The value is from -1 to 1 continuously, and 1 indicating least risk, the best value for that topic. At a high level, how do you get a topic level for the value for that company? Is aggregation over keywords, bigrams, or trigrams we generated. Now it comes down to this: how we generate our proprietary keywords, bigram, trigrams, and others for ESG, for each topic. So we created those using topic modeling, and you all know LDA, and Google's pre-trained word embedding. We also use subjective judgment based on subject experts. We also visit, test, revise those keyword bigrams. We have a section later on NLP and deep learning for this section. And earlier we mentioned we have data from government, we have data from news, from company websites. So for deep learning, we use BERT because of B and T, they are bidirectional, T for transformer, over almost, ELMO, L's for long-term, short-term memory model. We find out BERT performs better than GPT, Elmos, and others. So border model used for government data, for example, like 10K reports. 10K reports contains company behavior in the area of ESG. And from there, border model give us polarities, like for a given topic, for a given keywords, the probability of positive, negative, or neutral. That's how we assign the polarity for each keyword. But for company websites, for global news, we just use a zero-shot model because the language there are very standard English language, and zero-shot model is on the fly. We use the model, built by others, and it just apply them and generate the polarity for the keywords and backgrounds. So finally, we have 17 values for a company. Our competitors, they give you no more than 4, like Sustainalytics, they give you 4 values. MSI, S&P Global, we provide 17 of them. We go down even further to theme level indexes. Not only that, when we provide a value for you about a company, we also give you reason codes. The reason codes are those specific data points down to a text, like a sentence, to support the values we assign. So for the 17 indexes, we roll up from lower level, from topic level. And how do we get a topic level value? And last slide shows you we based on keyword bigram values. When you combine topic level into theme level, into dimension level, remember different industry, the weights should be different. So apply the weights. Earlier slide show example like how we use SASB to infer the weights for a given industry. We apply the value, the polarity, and the weights importance, and generate the theme level value and the overall value. We have scores, and also we have index. So for ESG, for theme level, the index, the scales are from 1 to 5, there are 5 values. For theme level, is 1 to 3. The risk direction, 1 to 5, 5 means the highest risk. 1 to 3, 3 means the highest risk. So let me briefly go through NLP and deep learning. For ESG, you need to use the news, use company website, use the text. So you have to use a word embedding. I think if you work on this area, you know this very well for word embedding. There are many methods to do this, from simple TF-IDF and to deep learning. There are different ways. And also one popular one people use is Google. Google has a pre-trained word embedding. That's something you can try first. We use that too. And Google is based on like near 4 billion words. They build their model, and you can use the model for your ESG projects. We find out it's very useful. Of course, you have to create your model, like I earlier mentioned, BERT model and zero-shot model, based on what you have on this page. About the news, I'll give you an idea how we process news. First, we bought news, those like tens of thousands news sources. We bought from companies like First Rain, and this a huge data set by the hour, I don't know, maybe by the minute. And we FTP them to our server. That's a starting point. And once we get that, we need to have very clear business identification from the news. How do you know this news is about this company? This piece of news may be talking about several companies. And also, how do you know this company is for that company? Because the same name may be the name for several companies. So you do not want to apply the news to a different companies. For this, D&B has luck because we have dance number. We are very clear, we are very good to differentiate from news, which news is for which company. Even for the company, we know is that for your domestic ultimate, your parent, or for your subsidiary. We know very well this mapping. For you, probably this is something hard for you, or you may also check with me. I can share with you and also tell you to see whether we can help you in this regard. The next is NLP. For natural language processing, those are a typical process, like you tokenization, you remove stop words, and also lemmatization is a typical NLP. But the key part is the next one, the topic theme tagging. How you create deep learning models to assign polarity to each topic. Yeah, I'm in the sentiment analysis now. We use Google Colab for the deep learning, and we try different models. Eventually, we pick the optimal model for the different data sources. You gotta try for a given data source. You may find that some model works better than others. That's how we find. So that's why I use different models for different data sources for sentiment analysis. So for those of you who may not know what is sentiment analysis, in plain English, it is assign values to each background, to each sentence. For example, see, this is for environment. Is this talking about negatively about the company or positively? Okay, at a high level. Once we have a deep learning model using Colab, generate those polarities, we use Databricks. So it's faster for large data to do the data processing, calculation, generating the score index. So this page is for news, and this page is for website, for company website. For company website, we do, the company, so downs matching the business resolution identification is less an issue, but still, for you, make sure this is you use the information from the right companies, and you also go down to lower level because each company domain has their domain URL. Underneath each domain URL, there are sub URLs, or even more. Very soon you find out you run out of computer power, and so you can choose the URLs, sub URLs, which are relevant to ESGs. Okay, and then perform your web scraping, not a web crawling, because web crawling you have dump all the data. We figure out we run out of space, not only computer power. So you get to have a specific goal, and it's called web scraping. That's how different web scraping is from web crawling. So web scraping will give the information. For the rest, will be similar to what I told you earlier on the last slide. NLP, topic tagging, how you relate the text to a specific ESG topic. Then the sentiment analysis, then the scoring. ESG performance. Earlier mentioned D&B ESG, we find out luckily they are correlated with business performance. For example, sales growth, right? Sales, the top line of your business, the growth of sales. Maybe it's because of company image, but we see on the screen those three graphics for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, short term, long term. Pretty much you do see higher ESG companies with better ESG scores. They do have higher sales growth. Okay. This is different from investment. For investment, number one, you can only use public companies. We are using 5 million private companies, plus public company here. And for stock return, you may not see such a clear picture. What for sales growth? Yes. So that was the performance of ESG overall. And now let's go down one level. Let's go down to theme level, if you still remember what a theme is, right? For example, like S. S is a dimension, social. Underneath S, there are many themes. And one theme called a supplier engagement. Because you remember this seminar is about supplier management. So let's see this supplier engagement theme, how this score matters to company performance. Again, we see a similar pattern, right? Monotonic pattern. And if you are good in supplier engagement for this theme on ESG, it's good overall for your business performance, for sales growth, short-term and long-term. Now this is based on 3 to 5 million suppliers. Not on a few thousand public companies, there's something else. But today we focus on suppliers. And we do have results on the public companies, but there's something it's not focused on today, but you may, if you have questions, you can ask me later after this presentation. Suppliers. Delinquency is a concern. You may not familiar with delinquency, but for suppliers, delinquency is a popular commercial credit risk measurement. How you do not pay your bill on time. Are you 30 days late, 60 days, 19 days, or you're severely delinquent on your payment? And D&B has lots of very good, I think it's top of the line credit risk scores on delinquency. So we check ESG rating on delinquency score for a company. We see a correlation here. What about, again, lower level ESG score, supplier engagement for this theme, not a dimension to lower level? How supplier engagement impact delinquency? Again, monotonic. Yeah. So it looks good. What about the net income, your bottom line? This is for public companies. Okay, so for net income growth, we find out for public companies, our ESG also works well. This is for 3 years. Okay, 1 year we do not see much difference. You can see ESG is more have a more long-term impact on your company. What about return on sales? So this is like from your income statement, right? Your bottom line over your top line, and the growth of the ratio for public companies. Again, we see monotonic trends. And one reason behind this, you may wonder, is how we define ESG, the framework we use, how we combine those top standards into dimensions, themes, and topics, and how we measure them. That's how we are different from others. So let's talk about ESG and a supplier portfolio of a company that's called ABC Inc. I just realized there is a company called ABC Inc. But this ABC Inc. is fictitious, okay? It's not real. So for the supplier portfolio for this company called ABC Inc., again, fake name. First, we compare the at the portfolio level, how this company against its peers in the same industry. We show this company how your suppliers in terms of ESG behavior against your peers, their suppliers. You remember ESG ratings, 5 means most risky, 1 means the best. So here you have a glance like this company called ABC. They are better in terms of supplier portfolio ESG behaviors than average of their peers. Now we go down to E rating. So for this portfolio, for this company's supplier portfolio, we tell you overall the average portfolio rating, and we tell you number of suppliers for each rating, the percentage. And also for the theme at the bottom of this page, you can see underneath E, we have several themes. The average theme score for this portfolio. As you recall, I mentioned earlier, the theme score is from 0 to 3. Okay, 3 means the worst, 0 means the best. So this gives you more detailed information about your supplier portfolio in terms of ESG. This page is for S and for G. And we'll show you for each themes, underneath each theme, underneath dimension, how the scores are at the average scores. Again, I said earlier, we do not have time to go in depth on each slide, and later you can download. But this also tell you for social theme, and we tell you more details. Governance, there are several themes, details. And also among the themes, what are the most important drivers for the final score to your portfolio? You can tell where the issues are in case for your supplier management, or where you're strong, where you're weak for your suppliers. We also give you, for example, for E, we give you a reason code. Like for E, we tell you, is that because the environmental opportunity, because of energy management, your suppliers are strong or are weak? See, this is for energy management positive. Those are suppliers, 23 of them, they are strong on this. And we also have energy management neutral. 5 of them, they are neutral. And I think somewhere you see 12 of them, oh, they are not. They are bad on energy management. But overall, your suppliers are good on energy management. Again, this gives you a better full picture of your suppliers in terms of ESG. This is for S, and this is for G. Now, let's drill down to one supplier for this ABC Inc. The last slides, they are on portfolios. So we have this for each supplier. Pick one supplier. Let's see XYZ Inc. So XYZ is in the portfolio, supplier portfolio of ABC Inc. So for XYZ, we have all the information we showed you earlier, plus we give you more detail. For example, for XYZ Inc., this one has E score, have good E score. We can show you the text, the sentences, which shows this company does deserve a good score on E. For example, like on the emission and the pollution reduction on this topic. And these are the words. They use nuclear power, of course, is better for emission, right? And good for pollution reduction. And they are committed to carbon emission reduction. They also reduce greenhouse gas emission from their natural gas business. This is from the news. And for the same company, XYZ, is better on water management. How do we know why we assign water management? Because this is from the news, environmental officers, and have given bad ratings to those owners, including XYZ Inc. So we know this company is weak on water management. Earlier we talked about confidence, score confidence. And how can you trust your score? How your client trust your score? And because the data, we know ESG data mostly when you start are sparse, and unless you have rich data, of course, you have more confidence. So D&B also provide the ESG index confidence scores for each index. We have 17 of them, right? We'll provide 17 confidence levels. And those confidence levels are based on data richness, how the data is covered well for that topic, and also how the data, they are related to ESG. So for the confidence level, we provide a high, medium, low. We tell you for this index, we have high confidence. And for those, for E, for this dimension, our confidence medium, which means we give you a score, but our confidence medium. So it's up to you how you use our score. For supplier management, D&B has several, I think the industry standard scores. Those are flagship scores for D&B. They are global scores for any business. I think lots of clients of ours use the scores. Now we have 4 of them. We have SIR, we have SSI, we have compliance risk, and we also have this ESG scores. So let's first about SIR, S-E-R, is a supplier evaluation risk. So SIR, for each business, each supplier, we assign a value from 1 to 9. And 9 means high risk, next to bankruptcy, okay, bankruptcy. Low risk, 1 means low risk. Low risk mostly like the company is safe financially, is secure, or long term. When we say long term, 1 year and above. So SIR score, again, is one flagship score we have for global business. And we do not have much competition in those regard in terms of risk scores for business. The second one I mentioned, SSI, a supplier stability indicator. At a higher level, it's a short-term risk score. For each company, each business, globally, we assign a score from 0 to 10. And with 10 as the most risky, 0 as the best. And let's talk about this company in the next 90 days. I think from now, if you work on supplier arena, you know for supplier management, 1 year sometimes can be too long. You need a shorter, like SSI, 3 months scores. The chance your company will go bankrupt in 3 months. The chance your company will be in financial trouble in 3 months. So that's what SSI tells you. So that D&B SSI score provide to you. It's from 0 to 10. I said 10 is most risky. So what about ESG, our ESG scores correlated with SIR and SSI? You saw the 2 graphics. They are correlated. Now we have ESG, we have SIR, we have SSI. We miss one compliance risk I didn't show here. The reason I did not show here because I think for compliance risk I mentioned earlier, they are about anti-corruption, human trafficking, and all these components, they happen to be part of our ESG framework. So by definition, our compliance risk index, that score, should be correlated with D&B ESG score. So I didn't show them here. Okay, that's for the 4 risk scores for a supplier, and we find out they are related. They correlate very well. So they are the family of D&B supplier risk scores, 4 of them. Yes, I think because there are too much details, I didn't go into depth for each one, but still I think we are running for time. Let's conclude my presentation. I want to thank you for your patience. And also you see my email address. Again, I appreciate you if you drop me a line with your comments, critiques, suggestions, okay, anything. With that, Jack, back to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope you take a note of my email address. make sure keep in touch, and I would love to talk with you, and so we can share knowledges and make our ESG scores better for yours and for ours. Thank you. Jack, back to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was an excellent presentation. I found it so fascinating, and I learned about something I didn't know about something before. It's quite an operation that you guys have. However, before we wrap up, I think John has collected a couple of Q&As. So I'll hand it over to John, and then he'll hand it back to me.
Thanks. Jonathan, you can see there are 2 questions that came up during the talk, or if you don't see them, I can read them, so no problem.
If you can read it, that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, first question is, looking at the correlation of sales growth with the ESG rating, is there any evidence of causation, or are both indicative of superior management?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's something I think is up to us to decide. We are now seeing there's a causal relationship between the two. We just tell you we find out the zero-order correlation. Of course, you can assume, make a judgment on the companies. That's something we're also trying to create more topics and diagrams to see whether we can help our clients to understand the scores. But for now, it's a zero-order correlation.
Thank you very much. And then the other question is, how big is the team who works on the ESG scoring? What are their roles, data engineers, scientists, and so on? In other words, what are the capabilities you need to do a successful ESG team?
Yes, I think both are good questions. I can tell the people who read the question, they must know ESG very well. If you work on ESG, you know you need a team. I'll give you an example, like MSCI. MSCI, they have their ESG scores for many years. And they have, last time I checked, they have nearly 190 analysts globally. These are analysts. I'm not talking about other functions on ESG. Of course, I cannot tell you how many people in D&B, but function-wise, you need a team of people who will, as you can see from my slide, first, theoretical, conceptually, how you define ESG for your score, depending on your purpose of ESG, right? And then come down to the data. When you come to the data, that's the one part, and how you get the data. Luckily, D&B hosts a lot of data, business data, but still, maybe that's one reason we do not have large size of team. Of course, I wish I would have larger team. It's always not big enough. But depending on how deep you want to go, you need people who are very good on language processing. When I say language, it's not English, right? Different versions. You may say, gee, multi-language, it doesn't matter because they always translate into English. Then you start with English NLP. That's not true. Theoretically, it's maybe feasible, but no. So, for example, like for Chinese characters, okay? So first, I mentioned one thing about Chinese business identity. You gotta make sure, one thing you gotta make sure is that news is about that company. How? Based on business names. But if you check some Chinese company business names, they are English and Chinese. They may not be correlated. Maybe 2 different names. And also translation, we all know you lose in the process of translation. So it's better you build a team with capability of multiple languages. And also for deep learning, is if you check web, you may say, oh yeah, I see lots of ways to do ESG. But depending on how good you want to be in ESG. There's a large variation between how you have an ESG score, how much you can trust your ESG score. And maybe that's the reason why you see discrepancies among those data ESG providers, right? The same company with different scores. It's hard. And data may be incomplete. It's hard for you to have a comprehensive data collected on the same company. It's reasonable, but still you want to be as comprehensive as possible. So in that case, you need your capability to acquire data, to mining the data. So each step takes efforts. I won't say budget. Yes, we know, you know, the budget's behind it, and efforts and deep thought. So just for you, if you start with the ESG project, probably you want to first define your foundations, like the one we use. D&B defined the ESG foundations. You can design the foundations with your methodology of scoring in mind, so that later you do not have such a big work on building your scores. I think what I'm trying to say is it depends on your purpose of your score. So for D&B, we are trying to build a comprehensive framework. So that's why there are a lot of work, and I'm very thankful to the team behind me. I said my teammates, my colleagues, my boss, everybody, they are always there. So for you, just make sure in moving on, you may need support from people, from your friends, your colleagues a lot.
Thank you very much. And I had my own question.
Sure,
If
yeah.
companies change their ESG scores, do they vary between the ESG scores? And if a company is improving, does their performance better? And if a company is going down in their ESG score, does the activity reflect it? Does their profitability reflect it?
Yes. The relation between ESG and their financial performance, that's a big question. And people ask this one, especially for the, I think the last few years, mostly they are talking about public companies, for the stock values. That's a very good question, John. I think you get me, because I don't think there's an answer nowadays. If you check literature, there are two schools of thought. One school of thought says ESG and the financial performance, or the stock performance, they are unrelated. And there's a study on this saying they are unrelated. The other school of thought saying no, long term, if you work on ESG, you care about the world, your ESG profile, and it's help your company performance, long term is good for you. So for me, I see two schools of thought. So I cannot tell which one is more prevalent in that regard.
Thank you.
But I think maybe our audience later will tell us how this ESG can be used for this.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jonathan. Jack.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, again, thank you very much. However,